Hello. Hi, y'all. Let me see. I'm going to go live on Instagram too. Give me a hello in the chat. Do give me a hello in. Oh, there's replay. If you can hear me, give me a hello in the chat. If you can hear me, we are going to talk about different kinds of businesses that you can start. And I really want to bring up this article it's like a blog post, really, more than an article, that I am really into, that I reference a ton. And it is about, let me back up. Let me tell you who it's by. And let me see if I can get you the link to this article, because the article, let me pull it up. Hold on. I'm going to pull it up. This article is an article that I reference all the time about different kinds of businesses, and not just like, can you launch an agency business or a service business? That's not what I mean by different kinds of businesses. Actually, what I mean is that there are these different layers, these layers of wealth creation, that you can work with and build businesses around. So I want to talk to you about these 4 different levels of wealth creation. And I'm going to show you like a graphic that goes with it too, because there's a visual. So we're going to talk about the 4 layers of wealth creation, the levels of it, because at each of those levels, there's a different type of business that you can start. Does that make sense? 4 levels. If you think about it like these ladders you can climb. There's 4 different levels of the ladder. And I want to talk to you about sort of what those levels look like. I often think about this when I'm starting a new business or a new company. So let me see if I can find this article for you first. Ladders of wealth creation. Okay, so if you want to, let's see, for folks who are Instagram, I don't know how to get you this. I'm going to show this to you. And if you're on YouTube watching me, I'm going to put this into the chat so you can see this link. So let me share my screen. Let's see. Can I share my screen on YouTube? I don't know for YouTube folks if it's going to let me share my screen. So if not, check out that link I just posted. And what I'm going to do is share my screen for folks who want to see here. Okay, so I just posted that link into the chat to this article. This article is from really like 2 years ago, but it's so good that I reference it all the time. So it's called The Ladders of Wealth Creation, a step-by-step roadmap to building wealth. Ladders of Wealth Creation, a step-by-step roadmap to building wealth. And I'm going to fast forward all the way to the part of the article where there's this graph with the ladders. Do you guys see this? I put the link into the chat if you are watching on YouTube. And I'm showing it on my screen if you're watching me on Instagram. So the ladders of wealth creation. And the first ladder number 1, the first realm of the ladder is time for money. So this is where you are trading your time for money. So maybe you're doing an hourly job working for a company, or you have a salary working for a company. That's the first, like, step 1 in wealth creation. Put a number 1 into the chat. Type a 1 into the chat if this is something that you have already done before. Like, you have had a job where you trade time for money. You clock in, or you get paid by the hour, or something like that. Anyone done that before? Give me like a 1 in the chat if this is something like a way that you have worked before. Okay, I see some 1s coming in. Yes, like many of us, we have had a scenario where we are trading time for money. That's the first step on the ladder, right? It's the first step. But then the next step looks a little bit different. So the next thing that you climb to, let me turn my screen around. The second step is that you have your own service business. So that is where you maybe work hourly, but for clients, not like for a job at a company, but for clients that you have. Or you charge by the project, like, hey, this project is going to cost this much, but you have to pay me this much for the project. Or maybe you manage a team and you do service work. Like, so an example of this the stage of the ladder is where you own your own service business, kind of like a design agency, for example. Put a number 2 into the chat if you have done the second ladder of wealth creation before. You've run your own service business. Anyone put number 2 into the chat if this is you or you have done this type of work. And if you're just joining, by the way, I will repost the link to the article that I'm referring to and that we're looking at and talking about today. I refer to this all the time, and I think about this article all the time because it really is a helpful framework for thinking about wealth creation and the types of businesses that you can start. So put a 2 in the chat if you've run your own service business before. Maybe you charge people by the project, you charge individual clients. Okay, I see some 2s coming in. Right. So some of you guys have done this. Some of you guys are thinking about doing this, where you create your own business as a service business, you do the service in exchange for money, right? That's the second realm of the ladder. So many people start off and they're just exchanging time for money and they're working a job. The next progression in this article, what he's saying is that the next progression is you have your own service business. That's sort of the next wealth creation progression. So what comes after that? What do you do after you have your own service business? Well, if you look at this, it says the third layer of wealth creation is what's called a productized service. A productized service. What is a productized service? Well, where you have a fixed scope of work that you'll do for a fixed price. So it's not like a traditional agency where people are like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? What about this? Nope. You're like, this is my offering. I do just this. And if they're like, hey, can you do something else? You're like, nah, I don't do that. Right? That's a productized service. It's kind of in between a product and a service. It's a productized service. Or it could be selling consulting packages, right? Where you have a clear package of what you offer. Or maybe it's like a recurring service that your employees or other people on your team, they do that service, right? Or it's a recurring productized service. So an example of this is, let's say that you had a company and for your customers, you edit 4 videos per month for them for $1,000 a month flat fee. Right? 4 videos a month, $1,000 flat fee. That's an example of a productized service. This is the product. No, we're not going to do a bunch of extra stuff. This is what the offering is. Put number 3 into the chat if you have run a productized service business before, where there's like a clear scope of what you're going to do. It's not really like a traditional agency where you'll do anything that comes up. You have a very clear product. Alyssa's gave me a 3. Yeah. Julie gave me a 3. Right. So this is the next step in it. And if you haven't done this yet, by the way, if you had never run a business like this, or you're not thinking about this, I want to give you this framework so that you can be thinking about it, right? Because the next step in it is for you to get narrow and clear in scope for your productized service. Jamisha, yes, right. That's right. 3. Okay. So you can sort of see even now, like thus far, we're not even through all the realms of the ladder, but you can see how if you just look into the chat, the majority of people had done number 1 before, right? They had done that first step. Fewer people had done number 2, and even fewer people had done number 3, right? This is why sort of these are these next progressions as you climb up the ladder, fewer people do it, right? But this is sort of how you progress. Okay, so let me show you the 4th ladder, the 4 out of 4. So the 4th one is selling products. So this is digital products. It could be like e-courses, downloadables, or ebooks. Or it could be products that are sold in an ecosystem. Think like an iOS app, a WordPress plugin, an Airbnb house where like that product is sold in a whole ecosystem. Or maybe like physical products, like you sell hats or t-shirts in e-commerce. Or maybe you have a subscription software and it comes with consulting services too, right? Or just plain software as a service. People can log in, but it's just the software. Or even like marketplaces, like a social network, right? Facebook, Uber, eBay, those are all examples of products. This is the 4th ladder of wealth creation. There's not really much service involved here, right? Not really much service, not really much manual stuff. It is fully productized. Give me a 4 into the chat if you have launched a product business. Like you sell a clear product. It's not a service. It's not a productized service. It's just like pure product. Right? I see some 4s coming in. See some 4s. Yeah, got it. So it doesn't mean, and I see Julie is saying, no, I haven't done number 4 yet. That's why I've been like listening to you and learning from you, and hopefully I'll be at number 4 soon. Yes. And what's interesting about this article, and I do recommend that you read it. I'll get you guys the link, but I do recommend that you read it afterwards, after we have this conversation, to really fully read it. What's so interesting to me about these 4 layers is what he's saying in this article. This is like the key. So listen to this part. What he's saying in the article is that it's very difficult for most people to jump from number 1 to number 4 or from number 2 to number 4. He's saying you really should have, and you, for the best chances of success, you will have experience with each of them to get to the next ladder. It's like, imagine you're trying to climb up a ladder, but you decide that you want to skip 5 steps and put your leg all the way up to the top of the ladder to try to pull yourself up. Like, yeah, sure, maybe you could do it, but it's not all that smart of a strategy. It makes more sense to go in order, right? This is interesting because for those of you who have not launched a productized service before, it might make sense for you to launch a productized service before you go straight to just the product. For those of you who have never exchanged time for money, it may make sense for you to do that before you get to having your own service business. There's kind of like an order that makes it easier for you to go in. That's sort of the premise of this article that I think is really interesting. And I think in general is true, right? Like, it's hard. You learn a lot of stuff at each of those phases. If you are doing trading time for money, you learn a lot about how to value yourself, which you then can use in the second stage of wealth creation, which is having your own service business. Now you know how to ask for what you're worth, right? And when you're asking for what you're worth, you learn a lot in your service business. In step 2, you learn a whole lot about how you could streamline the experience for your customers, right? Instead of just doing one-off stuff for everybody, you could streamline it, which then moves you to a productized service, step 3. And when you're running a productized service, you go, wait a minute, like, I could use some software for this. I could really fully automate this, which gets you to the product. I find that most of y'all have the hardest time launching apps because you haven't actually engaged with the customer, your ideal customer, to help them manually. And if you haven't helped them at all manually, you have absolutely no clue what to build in the app, right? You have no clue. Now, many of you guys are building apps around things you do for work. And this is actually why I encourage folks to think about building an app or a business around something that you do or engage with already. And the reason I recommend that is because you kind of have already done some of the ladders of wealth creation already. If you are building an app, let's say you have a job and there's something really inefficient about your job. Maybe you're doing something manually as part of your job. Well, you already have had the experience of trading time for money because you're doing that job, right? So you've already done one of the steps. It gets you closer to it. So again, for folks who are watching on YouTube, I'll paste the link. If you are not on YouTube, I can't get you the link to the article that's clickable, so I will follow up with you on this. You also can just Google Nathan Barry. He's the guy who wrote the article. If you guys are not familiar with Nathan Barry, he's the CEO of ConvertKit, which is a really successful email software. They're like a competitor to MailChimp. So I put the link to the article by Nathan Barry in there. You can also just Google like Nathan Barry ladders of wealth creation. But the ladders of wealth creation, what they do is they give us ideas of what format of business it makes sense for us to build the next. And when I say us, I mean like individual entrepreneurs. So it's useful to look at where the last step was that you did. Did you, was the most complex thing that you've done trade time for money? Or is the most complex thing that you've done own your own service business? Or is the most complex thing that you've done had your own productized service? Whatever the most complex thing is that you've done thus far, try the next thing, but don't necessarily jump all the way over. If all you've done is trade time for money, don't necessarily all the way jump over to straight to products. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean that you can't include technology. You can have a really great service business. Let's say you have I don't know, I'm making something up, a business that helps people with housekeeping and cleaning their house, right? You can obviously take their bookings on a booking piece of technology or even create some technology around that. So it doesn't mean that you can't use technology. It means the center of the business that you build should be centered on whatever the next stage is that you should be focused on in wealth creation. Let me know in the chat. Does that make sense? that concept makes sense? I wanted to just, I've been doing these mini classes on Thursday and just dropping a little nugget of food for thought about business, about entrepreneurship, about app building, but not even exclusively app building. Does that make sense? Let me know in the chat if this is making some sense for you. If it is, Janice says, yes, it's making sense. Julie's giving me a thumbs up. Good, good, good. Okay, great. Awesome. 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 Yes. Okay, good. So what I want to do is I just want to open up to questions for this. And I also want to give you some more ideas of types of businesses that you can do in each of these phases and types of businesses that are also in this article. So I do recommend you check it out and read it. But this is a good framework to help you brainstorm business ideas and ones that are appropriate for your level of sophistication. And I don't mean that as like an insult or anything. It's just like we all are building and climbing the ladder. Right? So, okay. So the types of things that you are going to learn, you're going to learn at phase one, right? Giving time for money, which many of you guys have done already, right? And so this part you already know, right? At time for money, at that first level, what do you learn? You learn how to show up consistently. You learn how to be reliable. You learn how to learn new skills on a job, right? Most of us know that, like, when you start a job, you don't already know everything for the job. You learn those things in trading time for money. And then you're like, all right, check. I understand those things. And you move to the next realm of owning your own service business, right? So, what kinds of things do you think? Let me know in the chat. Like, what do you think you might get out of and learn from a service business? Anyone have thoughts on like why it would make sense to first try a service business and launch? By the way, if I think about my first company, so my first company was an art startup. And ultimately, I built this algorithm that matched people to artwork based on their taste. So if they liked photography, it would show them photography. If they liked paintings and had a budget of $500 and below, it would show them those things. But when I first launched it, on day one, it was not an algorithm. It was not an algorithm on day one. When I first started, it was a service. I went on LinkedIn.com and I was like, okay, well, I've got to have a person to help me find artwork for people. So I typed in art advisor into LinkedIn and I found a bunch of art advisors who could help me. And I sent messages to them and I said, hey, I'm actually going to start helping people find artwork. Can you help me find artwork for them? And if they buy it, I'll give you a commission on the piece or a percentage of what they paid. Right. So when I started, it was literally a service business. And then I was like, okay, I'm learning some things. And I turned it into a productized service, which then turned into a product. But I started it as a service business. So at a service business, what do you learn? You learn how to establish a company, like how to actually go to your state and to your local government and form the company. You learn how to find clients. You learn how to create proposals. You learn how to price your services the right way. You learn how to hire employees. You learn how to establish an online presence. And you also learn accounting, finance, business operations. It's very difficult to be learning those things for the first time while you're also learning complex product creation. So it's best to do a service business because you can control it. You're like right at the helm. You're like, I can execute service. Right. But you learn about setting up a company, finding clients, creating proposals. That's what that stage of the ladder is for. Pricing, hiring employees. That's what you do with that second stage of wealth creation. And then what do you think you might learn on the next phase, which is productized services, that third phase? For example, you're like, I'm going to audit your website, and my audit for your website is $1,000. Or I'm going to edit your videos, and it's $250 per video, not per hour. Per hour is time for money, right? $250 per video, that's starting to get into productized service. Or I'm a handyman and I'm going to charge you $50 per visit, not per hour. Hourly is trading time for money, right? Productized is like for the visit. Do you see the difference there? Fixed scope, fixed price. So at that phase, what do you learn? Okay, you learn how to design sales pages, how to process payments, how to standardize your system so that they're repeatable and the same level of quality for every person. Those are the main things you learn at that level of wealth creation, right? It's very difficult to be doing all of the other fancy stuff when you're still learning how to standardize the systems, right? And then you get to that fourth level of wealth creation where we're talking about products, right? You can manufacture a product, you can hand make a product, you can code a product, you can no code a product, all those things. So like an example of that fourth layer of wealth creation is where you are maybe you build an ebook for how to learn something, or you build a video course, or you actually sell tripods for vloggers, or you sell t-shirts, or you built an app, a software to do something. That's the fourth stage of wealth creation. And what are the things that you learn at that fourth stage? Okay, you learn customer support at scale. Like, how do you support 100, 200, 300, 5,000 customers at once? You learn about getting customers at scale, right? If you are doing those things and you're trying to learn all the stuff from the first phase and the second phase and the third phase and the fourth phase all at once, you will probably overwhelm yourself and quit. Right? So taking the consecutive steps really allows you to learn each of the things as you go, right? Learn each of those steps. And that's why I think this article that Nathan Barry wrote on the ladders of wealth creation, where he shows you these four ladders, is so interesting and so helpful for me. All right. So if you're on Instagram, I'm showing you the ladders of wealth creation now. If you're on YouTube, what I'll do is I will paste the link again so you have this article. My homework assignment for you is to go check out that article and read it. Read it and reflect on how you can apply it for yourself. Right? Apply it for how you can do it yourself. So if you're on YouTube, can you guys see that link on YouTube to the article? Let me know for YouTube folks if you can see the link. If you're watching on Instagram, I can't give you the link, but if you just go to Google and you Google ladders of wealth creation, if you need to add Nathan Barry is his name, then you can find the article. Really, really good and helpful on thinking about this. Cool. Okay, that's all I got. Any questions before I go? Any questions? Yes, you can see it. Okay, good, good, good. Any questions? This is just meant to be like a quick mini lesson for me to talk to you about something that's on my mind that I think about a whole bunch. Julie says, I think step 4 is so different from the rest of the steps. And is it harder to take? Yeah. Each of the steps as you go are harder, right? And harder in multiple ways. I would argue that the biggest way that each of the steps are harder is they require more courage and willpower, right? So to get a job requires some courage, but like it doesn't require the same amount of courage as being like, I'm starting my own service business. That, for those of you who have done that, who have stepped out to start your own company, you already know what kind of courage it takes. And for those of you who are working through it right now, you're in the middle of getting through the courage of what it takes, right? So that's the second phase, and it gets harder there. And then to get to the third phase, which is productized services, you got to start saying no to some people. You got to start, people are going to be asking you for stuff, and you'll be like, no, that's not what I offer. That really is hard to do, right? You got to start turning down money to get to the next phase, turning down potential customers to get to that next phase. Say, no, this is the product offering, right? And by the way, you should be open to iterating. If nobody wants to buy your product offering, that's not the time to be rigid and be like, no, this is the product offering. But if you are ready to streamline it and you already know you've been doing the service thing, so you know what people want, you got to start turning people down, saying no to things for that next phase, right? No, it's this set price, this fixed thing, right? This happens all the time. I run a productized service at Apps Without Code because we have an agency where we will build the app for you. There is a specific scope that I give my team that like these are the types of apps we build. If it's outside of this scope, you have to say no to a person's money. My sales team hates this. They absolutely hate it. They're like, oh, but we could find a way to do it for them. I'm like, no, that's not what we do. So that's why that next phase is even harder. And then really getting into product starts to the reason that fourth phase is really difficult is because you have to have a lot actually like of technical knowledge. Whether that's if you're going to manufacture a physical product, you have to like have technical knowledge of how to make it, or you have to have technical knowledge of like how to create a software. That's why that fourth step gets really difficult. And you also start to get difficulties with that come with scaling, right? That come with like, oh my gosh, I have more customers than I myself can physically talk to. What do I do? You can't get to step four and really be consistent in step four without team or people helping you and that sort of thing. Right. So that's why they, yes, to answer your question, they do get harder. And that's specifically why. Yeah. Um, And there was a question, does your app builder help you through step four? So yeah, so I think what you mean is the class that I teach on building apps or even the agency where we build apps for you. Yes. So when it comes to like the technical knowledge of step four, my company does help folks with that. And more than anything, it's really going to help you if you have already had experience with those potential customers you want to serve anyway, via a service or a productized service. That's going to be the thing that really gives you the leg up. If you're coming into building a product, an app, and you know nothing about your customers, you never even talk to those people, it's just going to be hard in general, right? That's any kind of business. Okay. This is Tim's question. Is there a no-go zone for new app creations in a marketplace of multiple vendors? I'm not sure what you mean by no-go zone. So no, I don't think that there is in a marketplace of multiple vendors. Can you clarify for me what you mean by that, Tim? Because I want to make sure I'm directly answering your question. And specifically, what do you mean by no-go zone and the marketplace of multiple vendors? You mean like an Airbnb kind of platform? Is that what you mean? Cool, cool. Awesome. Ron is saying, I'm just joining for the first time. I like the conversation, but what are we talking about? Okay, great. Let me recap and reset the room. We are talking about the four types of businesses that you can start. And specifically, I'm talking about it through the lens of this article that I've been sharing. I'll put the link in for YouTubers on the 4 layers and ladders of wealth creation. So these 4 different steps of wealth creation that you can move up, and really looking at the different types of businesses and the next immediate step you should take in your business based on these ladders. Cool. Hey, Emily. Okay. Oh, someone was asking on Instagram what my YouTube is. It's apps without code. If you look up apps without code on YouTube or on Instagram, you can find me on either. And what I've been doing is I've been trying to on Thursdays go live with like a mini lesson about how I've been thinking about business, entrepreneurship, product creation, app creation. And so we're talking about these ladders of wealth creation, this article by Nathan Barry with these ladders that look like this, of really explaining that like you shouldn't try to jump from realm 1 of the ladder to realm 4, that you really want to do these sequentially and make sure that you're structuring a business where you do each step so that you can learn different elements of business and expand upon it as you go. Cool. Yeah, and if you're watching, Emily's like 4 ladders of wealth creation. I'm right on time. Yes. Okay, good. You're good. Awesome. Brandy's like, I'm so excited to start this course with my business partners. Awesome. Excited to have you. So we're gonna wrap up here. I really want to give you the homework though of going to read that article, because Nathan Barry is the CEO of ConvertKit. If you don't know ConvertKit, they're like a direct competitor to MailChimp, huge business that they've built. And they built that business actually by being very nichely focused on creators. They're like, it's not for everybody, it's for creators. Right. And he's done a really good job thinking about these ladders and outlining these ladders of wealth creation for folks. Okay, last questions. Ask questions. Eddie says, do you do one-on-one coaching? I don't directly do one-on-one coaching, but my team does. The only way for you to do one-on-one interaction though with me and my company is for us when we're building the app for you. We have one-on-one meetings, multiple one-on-one meetings to talk through your idea, to get details on it, to work through it together, to sketch it out together. So that would be the best way to work one-on-one with my team, which has the same methodology and structure as I do. Yeah. Cool. If you are in my bootcamp program, if you're in Absolute.Code Bootcamp and you have specific bootcamp questions, the best thing to do is just to send us an email. So if you do email support at absolute.code.com, then we can get you, whether you need to get started again or you need to get, what your next class or whatever it is, send us an email at support at absolute.code. Awesome. Cool. Okay. All right. In the case of, Tim is clarifying. So in the case of email automation, so like vendors like MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, ConvertKit. Oh yeah. Do you think that there's such thing as too much saturation? Oh yeah, that's a good question. Honestly, no. Like I think if you are really niche and focused and specific, I don't think that there is. So if you want to create like an email automation software for everybody, then I'd be like, yep, it's been done. They already did it. Like, don't even go there because you would be competing against such big players that it like wouldn't even make sense. Now, if you told me that you were going to do email marketing software for musicians, I'm making this up, for someone specific, I would say like, okay, that might make sense. Or for accountants. I saw actually my mom was on here earlier. My mom is a CPA and she's always like, hey, there's software out there, but it's not specifically for me and for my use case, right? I think there's not many spaces that are too crowded if you go really, really specific for a niche customer. Yeah. Cool. SP Dot had a question. How much is your bootcamp program? So my bootcamp program is 8 weeks and it's $2,000. If you go to the Apps of That Code website, you can see more information about it. Cool. Okay. All right. We're going to wrap up here. I will be back. Am I going to be back this Thursday coming up? I think so. I'm going to be back this Thursday coming up. And let me tell you 2 things I have coming up in September that you should know about. So in the week of September 13th, I am doing a challenge. It is a 5-day build your own Tinder app challenge. Now, your unique app idea may not be Tinder, but you're going to learn a bunch of the skills that you need in building Tinder for your own app. So we're going to do a 5-day build your own Tinder app challenge. That's the week of the 13th. I think it's 13th through the 17th. So that's coming up. If you're not on my email list, look out for that. Or if you are on my email list, look out for that. If you're not, you can go to absolute.code.com to get on the email list so that I can let you know once that's open. And then at the very end of September, so I think the 27th through the 29th, I'm doing a 3-day launch your website the right way challenge. So we're going to be working on websites at the end of the month and then app building in the middle of the month. So those 2 things are coming up. They're totally free and you can totally jump in to learn some skills and tactics and strategies that you're going to need for your own business. Julie says, why Tinder? Tinder is just like a fun app that many of us know that has a lot of the components that your app idea will likely have. It has profiles. It has different types of users. It has a cool swiping function, which you may or may not use the swiping function, but it has all these other features that you likely will use in your app too. So it's just like an app that many people are familiar with. That'll just be fun to make together in terms of learning the basics. We could have done Yelp or other apps too, but I just picked Tinder because I don't know, I thought it would be fun to build with y'all. So the way that it works is there's a video every day of the challenge. It's like 20 or 30 minutes. And you watch the video and you do what I'm doing click by click. And by the end of it, you will have built your first app. The website challenge is very similar. I'm going to be walking through what should be on your website, how it should be structured. And then by the end of that website challenge, you will have your website launched or relaunched. Cool. Let me know. Type a 1 in the chat if you think that you're going to join the Tinder challenge, and a 2 in the chat if you think that you're going to join the website challenge. We'd just love to hear if this is fun and interesting to you guys. And if I should do one. Put a 1 in the chat if you think you might do the app building Tinder challenge, and a 2 if you think you might sign up for the website challenge. They're free challenges. The Tinder challenge is a week, 5 days, and the website challenge is 3 days. We can do it a little bit faster because websites are simpler than apps. Cool. Okay. I see what 2, 1 and 2, both 2, 1. Okay, I see a mix here. Not sure which one. You could do both. They're both free. You can just do both. And they're 1 week apart from each other, but just letting y'all know what is coming up this month in terms of free programs and free content that I'm doing for y'all. Cool. Okay. All right. I will talk to y'all soon. For real, this time I'm logging off. This is really supposed to be 20 minutes. I always stay on way longer and chat with you and share all kinds of ideas. So I will see you here next week. And then after that, I will see you the week after that. I won't be here live because we'll be doing the challenge together, the 5-day build your own challenge. All right. See y'all later. Bye.